In our previous video, we refactored this app into smaller components for smoother development, but today we're tackling something much more ambitious, converting the entire project to SvelteKit. And we won't be doing this by hand. Instead, we'll leverage Aider's powerful scripting capability to automate the migration process. Instead of tediously converting 20 plus components one by one, Aider will help us to automate this process with precision, saving time, reducing frustration, and keeping us in control. Let's dive in. Why convert to SvelteKit? Why not continue with React? Sure, we could continue building with React, but Svelte offers a simpler syntax, making our code base more readable and cost-effective. And yes, I personally enjoy Svelte. But why start with React in the first place? I started with React to experiment, connect with a larger audience familiar with it, and ultimately create content that introduces Svelte to those who haven't tried it. To begin, let's go to Visual Studio and we'll create a new branch. And then let's check out that branch. This way, we keep our migration isolated and safe from our main code base. We'll use Aider's architect mode to scaffold the new SvelteKit environment in place without starting a separate project. I will start Aider. And then here, I will paste in my prompt, starting with /architect, indicating that we will use the architect mode of Aider. So let's hit enter. Let's allow Aider to access the package.json. When using Aider's architect, Aider is not directly editing files yet, so the architect model simply lay out its plan and proposal on how to edit the project. So now, Aider is confirming to us if we want to proceed. So this is the implementation step. So let's press yes. As planned, Aider is now implementing the changes. Now, Aider is asking to create this new file, so we will answer yes to all of them. Aider is now going to read back the files that it's written just to make sure that everything is correct. So we can scroll up here and see what happened. So Aider did an inspection to the created files and noticed some duplicate content for a couple of files here. And it lay out the plan that's needed. So let's press enter. Alright, so you can notice here that Aider automatically commits every change that it is making. So we can see the committed changes here. First, this commit, it created Svelte specific files and updated some of the existing files like package.json. And on the second commit, it removes the duplicates that it found. If we go back a bit, I noticed that we have something to run, specifically npm install, because Aider updated the package.json file. So we need to run npm install. Let's do that. In order for Aider to be able to capture the command output, I will not exit Aider and instead use the /run command followed by the actual command that I want to run. So we don't need to add the output to the chat because there's no issue here. So we can press N. Now, the next step is to rerun the npm run dev. Looks like there's no issue in running npm run dev, but to make sure, let's go to our browser. There you go. Welcome to SvelteKit. Migration in progress. Let's check if there's any issue or error in the console by pressing F12. There's no error or warnings here, so we're doing great so far. Now let's go back to Visual Studio Code. So we can exit Aider now. Now it's time to do the actual migration. If we take a look at our files, we have at least 19 components here, or around 20. If we do this one by one, it's going to take a lot of time, and we don't want to do that. Instead, to automate this process, I have written a migration script using Aider's scripting capabilities, as described in Aider's documentation here. We can either use the command line or script using Python. So I chose the command line. I'd like to walk you through how I created this script. If we go back to our Visual Studio Code here and run Aider, we can see here that there's a repo map. That means if we take a look at Aider's documentation, it is a concise map of your whole Git repository. So this is what it looks like. As we can see here, we can use this to build a dependency graph because most of the components here, for example, depends on other codes like this. We want to make sure the correct order of our migration. So I utilized the repo map of Aider, and to print out the repo map of Aider, we can use the command /map. And here is the repo map of this repository. What I did is I copied this repo map and then I go to Claude, I pasted it, and I mentioned what I want to achieve here. I plan on migrating a React project into Svelte, and I plan on scripting it. I requested Claude to create a dependency graph. So Claude generated this mermaid diagram that shows the dependency between the components. And then I copied the underlying code and I created a new chat here in Claude, pasting again the repo map as well as the mermaid code here, and adding some information from Aider's documentation regarding scripting, particularly this part, so that Claude will have an idea what to do. And then I've added some prompt here to use the attach file and the pasted code that I provided to be able to generate a script that will do the migration automatically. And sure enough, Claude produced this script, and it even created the conversion steps required here. And what I do is I copy the contents of this file, and then I go to Visual Studio Code. I created a new folder called Migrator, created a new file, and pasted the code generated by Claude AI. And then I have added this portion of the code to make sure that the component being converted will not be deleted, or Aider will not be confused in trying to fix any issue found in the React component. And if we go back to Aider's documentation, it says here that Aider takes a -- message argument where we can give it a natural language instruction. There are also some command line options that are helpful in scripting here, and I figure out that it's better to feed a read-only file to Aider to make sure that it will not change anything in the React component. So aside from -- message, I also added -- read and then the React component. This is just to make sure that the LLM will surely not try to edit or delete the React file. So this is how I created this script. So now let's see if this will work. Let's try to run this script. Let's quit Aider, and then since I'm in the root folder here, I will run this script. So what it will do is it will do the migration in order of the dependency, like we can see here. So let's see it in action. Now it's migrating the list editor. Okay, let's say yes. So as you can see, we're still in control, as if we're doing Aider development like before. Okay, let's say yes to install Lucid Svelte. And now it's trying to migrate the next file here, the wizard navigation. And the new Svelte components is being placed here. Aider automatically commits any changes it makes, so that's why we cannot see any indication of change file in our Explorer here. So let's say yes to create the new file. There you go. We don't need to run this because we already ran it before. So let's say no. And then Aider proceeded to the next one, project basic info. We can notice here that the Aider's announcement is being displayed multiple times because Aider's scripting capability will simply execute the command here and then exit. So we're just doing this over and over again. Let's say yes. We can see the order of the changes here. It is now doing the level 1 base components with no dependencies. So it's almost done with level 1. We don't need to run npm install lucid. Aider did not remember that it already did that because, as I said, Aider is just applying the edits and then exit. And then it will proceed to migrate the next one. So we have completed migrating the level 1. So now let's enter to continue to the next level. Level 2 components, which is this one, preset selector. If we revisit the mermaid dependency graph here, we can see that Aider is doing the migration from bottom to top. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code and continue doing the migration. If you want to know what's happening behind the scenes, you can always inspect this file, the Aider input history. If we go to the bottom, we can see the actual command that is being sent to Aider. So repeatedly, that same command is being fed to Aider. Okay, so the second level has been completed. The preset section has been migrated. So let's press enter. Going back to the chat history, this is very useful. Here we can see what Aider is trying to do, and in case Aider did some mistakes or there's an issue with Aider, we can easily review the changes here and help Aider do what it's trying to do. And we can see that in every migration, there's a cost estimate here. For this particular migration, the user story editor, the cost is $0.03. Doing it this way, using scripting, will actually save us money because since we're running either one component at a time, we are not polluting our chat history. So the cost is around 2 cents or 3 cents per component. We have around 20, so that means we will spend around 50 cents for all of these conversion. Not bad. Not to mention the additional benefit of converting these React components to Svelte because from now on, we will have a more concise code. So let's compare the converted React component with the original one. So let's try the wizard navigation. Let's try to compare it with the Svelte version. And we can see here that the original React component has 77 lines of code. For the Svelte version, it only has 67. So we save 10 lines of code. If we have 20 components, saving 10 lines of code, that means we save 100 lines of code in this project. So now it's migrating the level 5 components. We're almost done. This particular component seems to be large, but there's no issue in converting it. The largest component that I have seen so far here is this component. So let's see how will Aider convert this component to Svelte. Is it going to be successful or problematic? But during our previous video, we have already reduced this to about 100 lines of code. As mentioned in the previous video, I tend to limit the size of my file to less than 300 lines of code because otherwise any AI model, however good it is, will not be able to process it well. And if that happens, we will be forced to redo our prompt, try it again, and then we incur a lot of cost doing that. Looks like Aider is now converting this file. There's no problem because the file is relatively short. Then finally, the level 6. Now the migration has been completed. Nice. So if we see the resulting components that has been migrated, all of the components is placed under this components folder. And right now, if we go to our npm run dev, there's no effect because what we did so far is migrate the components one by one. So now we will ask Aider to utilize the new Svelte components that we have created. So let's start Aider. I will start with the architect mode. Let's see what will happen. So Aider is requesting to add these files. So I will say no here. I will skip because now we have an idea of which files to bring in. I will add those files. And then I will repeat the same prompt. Okay, so what's the plan? First, update the vite config. Next, replace main tsx with main ts. Third, delete the React files no longer needed. Then update the index.html and then install the required Svelte dependencies. So let's press yes. Uh-oh, this is going to be an issue. If this happens, then there's an issue with the edit format. But let's proceed. Okay, Aider is having a difficulty here. It's trying to edit the app.tsx. We don't want that. So I will cancel this. Now I will reset our session and I will undo any commits that Aider did here. Let's review. Aider is updating this, which we don't need to be updated. So we can undo this. This is part of the migration, the last migrated component. So this is good. And let's just discard all of these changes here. Okay, so now I will re-add the files that's required by Aider here. But what I will do differently now is instead of adding all of them as editable, I will only add the React components as read-only. These are the read-only files. These are the editable files. Now let's rerun our prompt. Okay, let's say yes. Because now the architect model will try to reassess the changes it did. Here, it noticed some duplicate sections. So it is suggesting to clean this file. Okay, so let's proceed. The edit model will now proceed with the proposed changes. As long as it's not a React app or a React component, we will say yes. This happens because we already asked Aider to do the setup before our one-by-one migration, right? Okay, what happened here? Only 3 reflections allowed, stopping. So maybe we're hitting some limit. If we take a look at our project, we go to npm run dev. So there's an error. Let's ask Aider to fix it for us. I will reset this session and then I will try to run npm run dev within Aider. And then I will say yes to add the output to the chat. Aider is struggling again. So we encountered this error again, or this warning. So what we will do is help Aider. Okay, so why is it trying to remove the dependencies? Let's reset again, see if there's anything changed. We have a different error now, but it's trying to remove this belt dependencies and add React ones. So we don't want to do that. Okay, let's quit and look at the source control, because Aider is trying to fix a wrong issue. So this is trying to convert from Svelte to React. We don't want that. So definitely this will have to go, as well as this. So Aider is getting confused about the type of project we are working on. So now let's restart Aider, and this time we will ensure that we are requesting for SvelteKit setup. So why not we use code mode this time? And let's add some instruction. So it did replace this Vite React TypeScript starter with AI Prompt Architect. So that will help. Okay, so it fails to load project form that's built. Let's cancel, and then let's remove everything here. Let's commit our changes. So let's analyze the error here. Let's start with the red ones. So failed to load URL project forms belt. Let's open this. So the project form cannot be found. So if we take a look at the apps belt, it's here, and it's trying to load the components by going up instead of going inside the components. It's just a matter of removing this extra dot. And as you can see, we are able to fix the issues except for this. So there's no guidelines section. So let's review the migration script and see if there's guidelines in the list of the files. So there's none with this name. Let's go to Claude. The guidelines section is there, and in the dependency graph, it's also there. It missed one file in the migration script. So what shall we do? We don't want to run the migration script again because we only missed one file. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and take a look at the migration instruction. Provide the name of the component, but we already deleted the React component. Good thing is we already set up Git in our project, so we can revert back the deleted files that we removed earlier. So in this commit, we removed all of this, and we can see guidelines section is here. I will save it manually, then paste the contents, and then here we can say, and since this spans multiple lines, we need to join the lines so that we will able to execute this in the terminal. So to join the line, we can say join lines, and we can copy this whole message and replace the Aider command here with that message. And then here, we'll provide the React component. Okay, let's copy the whole line, and let's create a new terminal session here and paste in the whole message or the whole command, and then let's press enter. So what we did here is we manually migrated this particular React component without using the script, only this part of the script, and it looks like it's doing its job now. Okay, so let's check if it created the file correctly. So there it is. We should still have an error, and let's go to the browser, refresh. Let's go back to the terminal, and sure enough, we have a lot of error. Let's fix the red ones first. Let's go to the project form. And here we can see different error, and looks like it's looking for the Lucid React, which is imported here. So let's go to this file, and it's importing Lucid React, but we don't have Lucid React anymore because we should be using Lucid Svelte. Let's ask Aider for assistance. I'm going to use curly braces to be able to paste the error in multiple lines. Then let's close the curly brace to enter this prompt to Aider. Okay, so it will install Lucid Svelte. Let's say yes. Okay, so let's say yes, and let's add project blueprints to the chat so that Aider will be able to replace this part of the code. So it looks like Lucid icon is not available in Lucid Svelte. Let's circle back to this error later. So let's go to the npm run dev. Okay, let's solve this issue one by one. Unexpected token. Let's feed this to Aider, but before that, let's commit. Let's add the file. This looks like a more detailed error. So it looks like we were able to resolve that particular error, but now we have a new error. So failed to load URL story-driven types. Now let's open this file. Yeah, there's an issue with these import statements. And for this, let's find it. and looks like it does not exist. Let's look at the source control. Maybe we remove it as well. Yeah, it's here. We can ignore that for now. Restart the npm run dev. There are several warnings that we can ignore for now. There you go. It works. All the components here are looking good. So I will not completely fix all the functionality because I know from the start that this app has some issues. So right now we can say that we have succeeded in converting the AI Prompt Architect app from React to SvelteKit. In our next video, we'll dive into bug fixes, and we will also start adding new features to our new SvelteKit app, AI Prompt Architect, and we will also deploy this finally. If you found this migration process and Aider scripting helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more content on developing with Svelte, Aider, and other tools. Thank you for watching. Happy coding!